Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Guess what? A Pro Tour just happened. That's what. Time for the tournament review. We saw a sweet mix of decks in Vancouver, and it was remarkable to see the effects that Origins has had on the format even already. Seriously, we never could have predicted some of these. Now, as fun as these decks are, there are a couple repeats. With that in mind, we'll start just by listing off the top 8 players and their decks, then we'll break down how each of the decks worked out and all that good stuff. Ready? Let's go. Joel Larson won the day running a blisteringly fast mono-red aggro deck. He got there going 5 full games against Mike Siegrist, who was playing the big new deck to come out of the weekend, Blue, Red, and Soul Artifact. Next up was Paul Jackson in 3rd place with an old standby Green-Red Devotion. Matthew Sperling picked up 4th with Obzan Control, Kentaro Yamamoto finished 5th with Obzan Megamorph, Stephen Neal in 6th and Patrick Cox in 7th were both on the mono-red aggro plan, and finally Stefan Barrios finished 8th with another Blue, Red, and Soul Artifact deck. So we'll start the breakdown with Joel Larson's mono-red aggro list. Remember when I said this deck was blisteringly fast? Here's why. It has 18 creatures, 14 of them cost a single red mana to cast. On turn 1, you can play a Fire Drinker Satyr, a Lightning Berserker, Monastery Swiftspear, or Zergo Bellstriker. Playing a Swiftspear or dashing a Berserker, of which you have 4 each, gets your opponent to 19 on turn 1. The sold 2-drop is a playset of Abbot of Carol Keep. Given how many 1-drops you're running, 19 in total, if you include spells, you can reasonably drop an Abbot on turn 3 for value. As for spells, it's pretty much non-stop fire interrupted only by lightning. But then you're running 8 creatures with prowess, so this works out. Wild Slash or Fiery Impulse can just blank a fast opponent's turn 1 play. Lightning Strike is just as solid as ever. There's also a playset of Searing Blood in the main deck. You wouldn't have thought this would be so strong, but it actually now has targets in every deck. Control decks are playing small creatures like Jace Vryn's Prodigy and Satyr Wayfinder. Ramp decks use mana creatures like Elvish Mystic and Rattleclaw Mystic. Midrange has creatures like Den Protector and again Satyr Wayfinder. Fast aggro decks have tons of tiny creatures that you can burn off for the easy 2-for-1. The only cards in the main deck that cost more than 2 mana are Exquisite Firecraft and Stoke the Flames. With all the cheap creatures you have, Stoke the Flames is almost always coming out for less than full price, and Exquisite Firecraft is well worth the price for 4 damage and virtually guaranteed protection from counters. In action, this deck is absurdly fast. In the semifinals, Larson put away 2 games in what couldn't have been more than 5 minutes of actual playtime. Stephen Neal's take was somewhat slower, with fewer 1-drops and some copies of Chandra, Fire of Kaladesh, and Goblin Heel Cutter. He also ran Eidolon of the Great Revel in the main deck rather than on sideboard. Patrick Cox's list was more similar to Larson's, with only 1 each of Goblin Heel Cutter and Goblin Glory Chaser. However, he did also include his Eidolons in the main deck. Let's move on to the big new deck to come out of the weekend. Thought Hangerback Walker was too expensive already? Too bad. Blue, Red, and Soul Artifact took 2nd and 8th places. We'll start with Mike Siegrist's 2nd place list. It starts with 5 playsets of creatures: Chief of the Foundry, Hangerback Walker, Ornithopter, Phyrexian Revoker, and Whirler Rogue. I'll be honest, this looks almost more like a solid limited deck than a top 8 standard deck. Yet given the theme of the deck, most of these inclusions are fairly self-explanatory. Phyrexian Revoker deserves special mention for essentially letting this deck survive against ramp decks like Green-Red Devotion. The cards that really make this deck explosive are in Soul Artifact and Shrapnel Blast. Either of them in its own way turns one of your artifacts into 5 damage. While Ghostfire Blade isn't as splashy, it's still very practical and can win games attached to an Ornithopter or Thopter token. A 1-of collateral damage is like a secondary Shrapnel Blast, giving you another sack outlet for a Hangerback Walker. Stubborn Denial does work once you have an ensouled artifact on the table, activating its Ferocious Claws and turning it into a 1-mana negate. Finally, Springleaf Drum lets you power out things like Whirler Rogues and bigger Hangerback Walkers, and gives your Ornithopters a bit more utility if you can't boost their power. Now, Ensoul Artifact isn't as fast as mono-red aggro, but few things are. And even then, the potential for explosive starts where you have a 5-5 beater on turn 2 or 3 is too much for a lot of decks to handle. That goes double if the 5-5 has flying. Stefan Barrios' deck was similar, of course. The difference was that he went deeper in on the Thopter token plan, with Thopter Engineer and Pia and Kira Nalaar. Thopter Engineer does good work, making both the Nalaar parents and Whirler Rogue that much more explosive. And the aforementioned Mom and Pop duo gives you a way to get through for the last few damage if you somehow can't get in on the attack. That's the new decks out of the way. The last 3 decks are similar to what we've seen since Origin's release, so we'll just give them a quick update to tell you where they're at. Paul Jackson's Green-Red Devotion is still on a familiar plan. The big addition here is Nissa Vastwood Seer, and even she's just a 2-of. Beyond that, it's business as usual. First you ramp, then Whisperwood Elemental stabilizes your side of the board, Pelucranos levels the other side, and Dragonlord Atarka comes down and finishes the game in a big way. Genesis Hydra can dig for any of the above, that's the short version. This deck has been around for a long time, so you can probably fill in the blanks by now. Next up is Matthew Sperling's Obzan Control. As we noted last time we saw, Languish is the biggest addition here. It wipes out high priority targets against pretty much any other deck while leaving your Siege Rhinos and Tassiger alive. Combine that with Corsair Crewfix, Den Protector value, tons of kill spells, and a few Planeswalkers, and you have a recipe for something nasty. Again, this isn't exactly news. This deck has been around for quite a while now. Kentaro Yamamoto's Obzan Megamorph is similar but runs a faster creature base with Deathmist Raptor and Satyr Wayfinder for added graveyard synergy. And that wraps up our look at the Pro Tour Top 8. When Origins came out, I never would have imagined we'd see the Pro Tour Finals go to Game 5 between Mono Red and Izzet Artifacts, but here we are. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see where Standard goes from here until rotation. Next weekend, we've got a Standard Grand Prix in San Diego. Barring a good old case of the Phyrexian oil, we'll be back here next week with the results. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.